This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for making it a priority to be back again today. I really appreciate that. I think it's encouraging that we've got a good group of people with representation from across Eau Claire, so thank you for that. Today we're going to talk overall strategies. We're going to talk about the draft public good order ordinance, and we're going to go into next steps. Your agenda talks about prioritizing the strategies. I really want to make sure that we take enough time today to talk through the public good order ordinance draft. I know last time there was a little bit of frustration because we were rushing a little bit, so I really want to make sure that you guys have sufficient group time. We will see how things go, but I don't want to rush that. So we may need to schedule an additional meeting to talk about prioritization after, at the end of today. So again, like we started every meeting, why are we here? So again, City Council, after hearing about the public good order ordinance draft, said that they would like a group to get together in the city to review the problem, look at potential solutions through a cooperative dialogue, research, and development of recommendations that promote ownership of the changes to improve public good order. So again, as I've said every time, we are working together on this. You're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to each other and own this together. Shared problem and collaborative solutions. Last time we really spent time brainstorming, confirming what the problem was. So you remember that. We spent time on together agreeing that there was an issue that we needed to address, and together brainstorming strategies. You have a stapled piece of paper at your table that is the whole list of brainstorm strategies. And I'm going to talk in a minute about how we got that list so it's clear to everybody and to make sure that you see yourselves in it. But we're going to do an introduction again. We've got a couple new people here, so I want to make sure everybody hears who's all in the room. We've got a couple of different faces. Today, though, I want you to share one word instead of one sentence. What one word describes an Eau Claire where there's not excessive consumption of alcohol or drugs? No ands, no buts, no multiple sentences. Again, one word that describes an Eau Claire where there's not excessive consumption of alcohol and drugs. So again, try to think about what we're going for. What's our goal here? So I'm Lisa Giese. I'm the moderator or facilitator. And my one word is healthy, of course, as the health department director. So Chad directed me to start this way. So Al, do you want to give us a start?
Sure. So my name is Alan Berkheim, the Eau Claire Fire Department. And the word I would use is safe.
Safe.
Colleen Smider, I'm with the Stark Randall Park Revitalization Corporation, and the word I would use would be peaceful.
Jed Hart with Fourth and Water Group. The word I would use is happy. I just described myself. I'm sorry.
It's good.
I am Beth Clark. I am his other half, and I'm going to go with fun.
Fun.
I'm Zach Arvold. I'm with the student government at CBTC. And the one word I would describe it is protected.
Protected. Good, Janessa.
I'm Janessa Stromberg from the City Attorney's Office, and my word would be active.
Nick Ashman with Historic Randall Park Neighborhood Association. My word would be productive.
David Sprick, University Police, and my one word is reasonable.
Joe Apple, Dean of Students at UW Eau Claire, and my word would be creative.
I'm Brandon Yates. I'm with the student government at UW Eau Claire, and I would say safe.
Thanks.
Dave Olson, I'm with the Tavern League, and I would say peaceful.
Tom Clapp, Great Way Shuttle. I'm going to say safe.
Good. Kevin.
Kevin Rosenberg with the 3rd Ward Neighborhood Association, and I was going with peaceful.
Steve Nick, City Attorney, better.
Ned Noel, I'm a city planner at the City of Eau Claire. I'd say freedom.
John Moss, General Property Management, rested.
Katie Wilson, Healthy Communities Co-Chair of the High Risk Drinking Prevention Action Team and Health Educator at the University, and I will say healthy.
Courtney Draxler from the Health Department, and I would say connected.
Austin O'Branson from the University, and I would say united.
Willie Henning, Chippewa Valley Technical College, and I would say enjoyable.
Chad Hoyard, Eau Claire Police Department, and I'd say teamwork.
So I think, if nothing else, that gives us a frame of where our goal is for lots of the work we do in Eau Claire. So thank you for that. And again, we have a couple of new people, so please welcome them. And we're going to walk through a little bit about what we're going to do today. So we are going to walk through the strategies, again, that you have on your table that we came up with, and talk about whether there's anything missing. We will talk about the Public Good Order Draft Ordinance as one of those strategies that we proposed. And again, I'm proposing that rather than getting to the prioritization process, we really spend our time and focus on that. We'll plan next meeting and we'll do a brief reflection. So, jump in with questions. So in front of you is the list of brainstormed categories and solutions. What I'd like to hear feedback about, and you got this in advance, so hopefully you had a chance to look at it, there's a lot there. So 17 different categories of possible solutions. Within those categories there are 55 solutions grouped under policy solutions, community organizational practice changes, and education solutions. I am not going to read these to you, but these, you'll hopefully see your words in these solutions. These are things that we wrote down on the flip chart, and we just tried to group some things together that made sense going together, and that fell under policy, community organizational, and education. Tell me whether or not you see reflected what we talked about at our last meeting. And whether or not there are things that are missing. So why don't we start first with the potential policy solutions. These are grouped into 7 areas. Public good order intoxication ordinances first. Ordinances related to alcohol serving establishments. Having lighting available, connected to the comp plan, considering alternate consequences for ordinance violations, having ordinances related to property owners, policy or ordinance related to access for alcohol, and ordinance or policy related to safe rides. Does that feel like it captured all of the different topic areas that we talked through? Or anything missing from the potential policy solutions? I'm going to keep going with silence. Is that fair? Okay. So then community organizational practice changes. This grouping included community event changes, alcohol serving organizational changes, transportation practice changes. Yeah.
I just want to jump back.
Yeah.
So as a group, we're consistent on the fact that it's an alcohol problem and a drug problem, correct? I don't see the word substance or drugs anywhere in here. Maybe you can point it out to me.
Yep, so again, some of the things are very specific because they are related to alcohol serving establishments in the policy section. The rest, so public good order and intoxication does include all substances, so that's that draft ordinance that includes more than just alcohol. So the first item is. The other items, and safe rides presumably could include safe rides for anybody that has a substance use challenge, as well as property owners. So again, many of these things are the result of unsafe use. So if you look at number 1, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 7 are not specific to alcohol. Does that make sense? Number 2 and number 6 are specific to alcohol. in my read of this. And then on the next page for community organization, community events 8 and 9 are specific to alcohol. The others are related to any substance use and challenges with that. So transportation issues, interaction with clients or students around having safe use and doing some screening, property owners, and then other issues. So those are all more general. And then the last section is on education. So educational efforts for students, one-on-one individual education, education for alcohol establishments, both servers and owners, and then very general community education. So that's how it was grouped based on our conversation last time. The intent today is to really do a scan to say, did we miss anything in my attempt to summarize and include things under categories? Was anything big missed? And then moving forward, we will be looking at these as potential strategies to prioritize. So do know that that's how this document will be used. Again, likely not today, because we will run out of time by talking about one of the strategies, but potentially the next step would be to prioritize these and to clarify them. This was a really broad brainstorm list, so this does not mean these are things that we will be working on. This was just everybody's ideas thrown on a piece of paper, okay? And again, one person might have said it. It may not be group consensus that this is what is important. It was just trying to capture everybody's ideas. Yeah?
Can we just, for the sake of conversation, consider in bullet 3, that first part, culture of alcohol and drug misuse?
Yeah, so show me where you're at.
That first part, that bullet 3.
Ah, thank you. Yep. Yeah, and we were trying to be consistent about that, so thank you. So culture of alcohol and other substance misuse.
And is there any chance that we can reference the 2016 numbers from the county in this somewhere that shows drug and mental illness is a bigger problem with the numbers the county has than alcohol? Is that too far off in next week's?
Yeah, so I think we'll talk a little bit at the end about how we as a group want to report this back to groups like City Council. So Jed, I think that's important, but data will definitely be part of it. This is really just our worksheet for what did we all brainstorm. Again, not that everybody supports all of these practice, strategies. And I would say some of us may not support a lot of them. We may, but they were really an attempt to capture everybody's ideas. Yeah, Joe?
First, I want to thank you for putting it together. I think you brought order to chaos.
It was a lot.
That you did capture everything that I remember as far as strategies are concerned. The one thing that I don't think was brought up, but to me seems relevant, is where do we go from here when this short-term convening of a group is over?
Yep.
And I think to have consideration to a longer-term group to look at these kinds of issues and implement multiple other strategies as well.
Yeah.
To me, this collaboration, I think, is really a big part of where the answer lies.
Yeah. So again, for everybody to hear, this group was gotten together for a specific reason to come up with ideas, and I think one of our next steps will be, where do we want it to go from here? City Council can't solve alcohol and other substance issue in Eau Claire County alone. None of us as individual organizations or groups can do it by ourselves. So it's thinking through which of these strategies do we think are most important to move forward, and who are the most important people and organizations to move them forward will need to be part of the conversation. So we will discuss that. Anything missing from this list? Thank you for those edits and those pieces. Anything that you were like, when you left here, you said, oh, I totally forgot to say we need to do X strategy in Eau Claire, and I didn't get it down, or I forgot it. It's a lot here. Got the next 10 years worth of work on our plates, right? All right. So one of the strategies that was proposed at our last meeting and was put forward at the start of this conversation was the Public Good Order Ordinance draft. So what we're going to do today is really do a deeper dive in your small groups to talk that through, to really get some substantive feedback. Today is not about micro editing. You know, I don't want us to get caught in wordsmithing, but we really need substantive feedback from all of you so we can make a decision about what to do next with that ordinance. So I'm going to talk quickly to give some background. Again, for those of you that weren't deep in the conversation back in March when this all started, actually it started well before March, but to give you a bit of background. So today, council action to date on March 13th, I believe was the date, and Janessa can correct me if I'm wrong. There was a public hearing held to discuss a draft change to the Public Good Order Ordinance, and that's what you have in front of you, and we're going to walk through that section by section. Council on Tuesday of that week said, time out, we're going to hold this until a community group meets to talk a bit more about it. There was a lot of feedback at that public discussion about having more conversation and some more collaborative work done. So we're in our timeout period right now. Council does want us to come back though, so we have an opportunity to come back and say, give feedback to council about what we think about the spot in our community for something like a tweak to the Public Good Order Ordinance. Today we're going to walk through each of the sections and get feedback from you about those. But really what prompted all of this, and I guess just to highlight as we start the conversation, is the purpose statement, which is the very first section on the draft ordinance. We will be talking about this some more, but I really want to frame today's conversation around this. New language is underlined in the ordinance, in the materials that you have in front of you. So it says, the City Council finds that excessive consumption of alcohol, use of illicit drugs, or improper use of controlled substances commonly produces secondary effects of reduced safety, I need my glasses, unruly conduct, inappropriate behavior, and neighborhood disruption and unrest. So it's framing the Public Good Order Ordinance around those substances, the misuse of those substances, and the resulting behavior. So that's really what prompted this whole discussion. So I want to really reset everybody to think about that as they start diving deep into the potential ordinance changes. Today we're going to walk through each of those sections, and I'm going to talk you through it so it's really clear, because if you haven't read ordinances, it might be confusing. So the first section, and the first on this is the worksheet that you'll be using, and each of the sections is labeled. So the very first box says purpose, and you see here the purpose statement that's in the ordinance. Again, I started to read the purpose statement. That's all new language. So it's taking the existing Public Good Order Ordinance and it's framing it using alcohol or other substances. So that's the first section. The second section, so the next row down in your grid, is the Public Good Order section. Again, the pieces that are underlined are new, but the Public Good Order piece of it was already in there. Now there's some additional language related to some locations for Public Good Order primarily. There's also some additional language of speaking or yelling in a volume to disrupt people in a dwelling unit. So do you see that section? All right, I'm just walking through section by section to orient everybody. Next section down is C, physical neighborhood disruption. This is an entirely new section. This was not previously there, in response to some concerns about physical neighborhood disruption, specifically related to unsafe alcohol and unsafe other substance use. Again, it's all framed by that purpose statement. Section D, Next row down in your grid, public intoxication. Again, a wholly new section focused specifically on intoxication related to alcohol or controlled substances. Again, the focus of this is the person is causing or likely to cause harm to themselves or others, or is causing or is likely to cause a disturbance. So do you see the specific language about how intoxication is described? The goal of that language is to prevent negative outcomes, like someone getting in their car and crashing it, someone causing disorder in the community that results in destruction of property, something that results in disorderly conduct. So we don't currently have a public intoxication ordinance, new language. On the back side of the ordinance, and also on the back side of the grid, are the remaining sections. Well, this isn't underlined. Section 2 is wholly new, as it is stated at the top. It says, is hereby created to read as follows. And this is in 9.79 versus 9.56. So location and time of stops, an entirely new section, and then penalty related to that section, entirely new. So all of this is new language, and it's related to historic Randall Park and Third Ward neighborhoods and the stopping of motor buses or vehicles for hire. So this is, again, laying out language about where between the hours of 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. It talks about pickup or drop off of passengers where they can't legally park. And it also talks about a violation of 10 or more individuals at his or her residence. And then the final section adds number 9 and 10 to the deposit schedule. So this is again Ordinance 1.24, which is related to Class 2 violations. So there's all of these existing violations, and it adds public behavior and location and time of stops to that. So 9.56050, which you see on the front of your page is everything on the front of the page is now a Class 2 violation, and anything on the back of the page or Section 2 would be considered a Class 2 violation. Is that enough really boring walking through the print? Some of you have looked at this really closely, but I want to make sure you're oriented. So the majority of today, we're going to work in small groups. So we have just a little bit over an hour of time, so we're going to spend about half an hour in your small groups looking at this ordinance. We're going to do about 15 minutes where we're reporting back and talking to each other to see if we can come to some agreement about public good ordinance going forward and in what form. The urgency of doing this, and again, we laid this out a little bit why we're taking this strategy first, is that City Council meets next week. If we would like to bring something forward collectively with the background of this group before students leave for the summer, we'd like to do it next week. If this group says, we can't get there, we don't feel like, we've gotten through process and we've really spent time talking to each other, but we're not ready to do it, we won't, but we really want to honor the ability for students particularly to be part of the conversation publicly. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Are you looking for that vote to be unanimous on this, or just majority, or?
We will have a conversation today and decide if we can live with it. This is not a group that really is a voting group, but we will bring forward recommendation in a report. And we will be bringing forward information to the council even if this group decides to not move forward at this point with the public good order ordinance. So I am already scheduled on the agenda to share about what we've been working on. So I'll be doing that regardless of our desire at this point in time to specifically bring an ordinance forward. My hope is that we have a group conversation and we can together say, this would help us move forward. to get to our goal of a safer and healthier community. And we think in this form, we can live with it. So that's my goal. But great question, Brandon. I think first we all have to agree that doing something in an ordinance form related to public intoxication and public good order makes sense for our community. So that's really what's in front of you, big picture. Does it make sense to use an ordinance as one of the many tools in the toolbox to look at our culture of alcohol and other substance misuse? It was proposed as one of the strategies, but really, if we can't come to a shared understanding that we think an ordinance makes some sense, then it's going to be a tough conversation today. So I get that. Yeah, Jen.
I mean, new ordinance, not ordinance. There's already laws in the books. We mean add to the ones that are already there.
So we have an existing public good order ordinance, so it would be the proposed language changes have been presented now, or some version of them. What will happen at council, something that I didn't quite understand, is that when the pause was taken at council, if this group has recommendations for strengthening the ordinance that we would like to present to council next week, Monday, we can certainly do that. They will be bringing back the same ordinance whenever they make the decision to do that to review. And then this group can provide some feedback about, we met, we spent time talking, we had a collaborative discussion, and we think X would be an important addition or Y would be an important deletion. So that's part of what we're going to ask you guys to do now. What I don't want to hear from people today, even though you can talk about it, is I don't like that ordinance without any specifics. Okay, so I'm going to push you pretty hard to give, and you'll see in your worksheet, if you like it, write it down. If you like the section and you like how it reads and you think it will be helpful in moving forward, a better culture and a better, safer environment for our neighborhoods, write down, yep, I can live with this, this is good. If you don't like something, I'm going to be pushing to say, what don't you like and how do you want it changed? Okay? And you should be pushing each other in your small groups in the same way. Okay? If something doesn't seem to work for you, why and what do you want different? Is that fair? All right. So starting now, what I'd like you to do is really spend time in your groups. You can talk as a group about whether you want some quiet reflection time first or if you want to just jump in. But we're going to go section by section. Now, because I know it's hard to do this, I'm going to give you some assignments about where you start. So my apologies, but I'm going to tell you where you have to start in your grid. Once you get through the side of the page that you've gotten through, then you can go to what you really want to talk about if it's not the start of the page, okay? So you guys are going to start on the front of the page, the first side. You guys are going to start on the back side. You guys on the front, you guys on the back, you guys on the front, okay? So that's only because I want to make sure that everybody doesn't get stuck on box one and never gets through, okay? So finish the page side and then go to whatever else you want to talk about. If you get through in the half an hour, everything awesome. Is that fair? All right, go. Make sure you have a recorder and a reporter again. So everybody remember there's donuts. Don't forget that.
Right now, just the general statement about public good order. If you're not, drunk,
Should I carry them
using illegal substances, this stuff that's on the book still applies. If you're causing problems, such passageway of alcohol or something, it's be an idiot. You can still use it.
Do you want me to turn?
Because the way it's framed, it seems like it's all about the drug use. Like the purpose statement.
No, I think that
This still would cover other things. If somebody's not using a substance.
that's how I read it.
Correct. Maybe go to a bit off the question.
And it was a brainstorm, it wasn't
Very effective. What would be close to subsection. That's how it was your additional to it, adding a specific policy statement to focus on. Simply saying this is an issue for some reason. We want to give it specific attention. A neighborhood disruption, part of the secondary effects of excessive alcohol use.
Is it hard to step back?
And those are really disorders.
Yeah, so
The bus stop.
I will,
Separate.
I had to ask that same question because I didn't remember, I mean, this was interesting that period, none of this stuff.
If adopted, you have three different prongs.
These are all violations.
Behavior that fell short of good order.
What happens
Whether you're under the controlled substance or would you just be a crazy person, so you could still use this ordinance.
Some, yeah, well, like even supposed to be in the require intoxication, like
So
if you
who doesn't
just
get paid to take a court system?
leave your front yard.
Anybody, whoever's cited,
Those
this
sort of
is
individual.
individual.
Extreme alcohol.
Yeah.
It's still a violation. So, I mean, Chad's got some pictures from this week.
No, this would be,
Supposition.
this,
Caution tape around it.
Right, right, exactly. It wasn't your place, was it, Jen?
this would apply to the bus.
But it's,
That's the question. That was your question, Joe. I don't want to have a high to the individual that gets cited.
So if it were
This would be to the
a
bus.
kid's birthday party,
The
that
125, I believe, is just the township bus.
that would still apply.
right.
I mean, I'm just,
They don't
but,
pick them up for
And I'm
the
not the
hour.
bus person.
but it does seem like it's focused on, it really says these are trying to limit
That's
the
what it's
secondary
meant.
effects of alcohol and illicit drugs.
So again, I think that
One of the reasons
what
to use
we're
ordinance
looking
purpose
for is and what's not in
That is
here,
without doubt.
and
That's why this is
Joe,
being.
there's been a lot of conversation, particularly related to not just that, but the whole diversion program would be.
But you're also saying it could be used if that alcohol, and if the purpose didn't apply, so that the purpose doesn't apply to birthday party and stuff, right? So
It
it's,
informs.
Yeah, they pay for the class, but they don't, yeah.
Prosecutors.
Yeah, and my understanding is that the total of this is something around $400 for 1.24.
Okay, so this
That would then
didn't
be down
do
to
too
the
well.
cost of the class.
Third Ward Neighborhood Association.
It's around
And the problem's gonna be
I think it's slightly different for
stuff
this
that's already
section.
illegal, because we say up that if I have a place in business, I'll tell someone to be
How it's written now.
Isn't that already illegal? They don't leave, I
Again,
call the
my
cops.
encouragement to all of you
Take
is
it
to
over.
think that, I mean, your feedback can be delete this entire section.
That's
Your
trespassing.
feedback can be this is a great piece of it. Or I think these changes would help strengthen this or make it a better section. And I get it, it's hard, so. And I know that you guys might want to focus on other things on the front side, but we don't want to, I just don't want nobody to focus on the back
I prefer to start.
The other thing I would suggest, maybe short circuit all those, is the majority of issues to me is
When you all think about that, does that make sense? Yeah.
No, but when it went that way, it just followed along then, so, the public intoxication language, or is likely to cause, that's a pre-crime. How do you know what I'm likely? Before I do? You make a judgment call. And part of that was, I wouldn't expect to ever get arrested at Mona Lisa's for drinking too much, but a college student. You know, there'd be a different way.
Make these changes. There may be all kinds of transportation things that you guys are looking at now that can be done. In the ordinance, keep, delete, change, right?
And then
You guys do, okay.
So I think thinking about a situation where, say, some two people are starting to argue really, really loudly, and it's probably gonna come to punches. I think it's appropriate for police to intervene at that point, even though there's no crime, because yelling at each other, that's not a crime. You can see where that's probably going, or if somebody falls into a snowbank. And so I think one of the things that could be added would be maybe an and or for the controlled substance, and then or vulnerable to harm from others, because that would, the snowbank, you're not going to harm to, I mean, you could extrapolate the harm to some, but that might just be a thought, I don't know, but, I mean, I see what, like, I talked to police officers, and they help kind of frame it better in my mind, like, what you're saying, you don't want that, like, that was that movie that was out like 10 years ago. You know, like the pre-crime, right? But this is like officers need to judge and try to de-escalate the situation. So this is like getting at that rather than just saying, oh, you look drunk, so I think you're causing a problem. Like, there has to be some extenuating circumstance that leads somebody to believe that they're going to something bad about to happen.
Well, the next thing is the intoxication part, and I can't really see the difference between these measurements and the measurements that are used to decide if I can't drive a car. It's certainly severe arsenal or different than driving a car. These are the exact same things, blurry vision. The last part there, which we have trouble with.
Those are some of the, it seems like indicators to try neighborhoods to maybe some residential determination.
Yes, what's the standard?
You know, in my experience, I adjudicate
so if people got trouble,
especially
maybe improve hearing from you because hindered you likely to correlate
and there's some first
whatever it is, either got to be causing or likely to cause harm to self or others, or to be causing or likely to cause.
that's the bottom
So basically what it is, those are the elements. So you've got to be drunk. But demonstrably intoxicated. So I get it, there is some subjectivity. Well, that's what we need by the way is not somewhere but it's someone who, are they full of shit drunk? Are they heaving, as a guy growing up? Are they
students getting on the bus, drinking beer, on the bus, students riding around with kids drinking beer. That's not counts.
I think that's not what it says. That's slurred speech.
I mean, I get it, there's reasons to have questions.
So I just really have to change any of the.
Right.
Some of the ways that kind of it's the same reason as the dialogue. It's hard to work on your okay.
It's like the commercial when they roll down the window and here comes the boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but there's still some measurable standard.
But there isn't for drugs. There isn't for drugs. And so officers have to make the determination based on the drugs, right? Because you're not going to do a blood test on somebody who say, are you under meth? And somebody can refuse it. But just upon arresting them.
When we prosecute because I'm just wondering, you talk about non-workable solutions. I deal with
based on it just seems we base it on their observable driving. We've got to prove it up in your and these sort of cases, I mean, I would say you walk up your hill, you can pick out the answer. That's what it is. They can jump right into it. The average mistake stands just out there, and I was watching my wife. There's one side, I guess it's not, the and I routinely see people that are too old. Well, it is the rare case. So, and we would not use it, of course, in the church. It's so for that's why, I mean,
Yeah, I had a question. Is there any time when, and I'm just looking like the yellow tape around the yard, and there's 5 houses per block like that where they're having no one coming in. They do partition out their yard so there's nobody that doesn't come in their yard that's not invited. It's a mess and it's noisy. Someone's showing somewhat responsibility to kind of keep people out there and supposed to.
So you're about halfway through. If you want to work on other sections, please think about getting through the side of the paper you're on and go to the other side.
clean up the next day, everybody's stays on private property, they're consuming within reasonable use. The focus of it, and if there's other ways.
Well, if they're not dangerously
drafted to bring it across.
They're not actually good, but this is an ordinance. I think those are things that should be made.
Start to take a women, both professionals, stumbled out, bumped into the wrong person. Somebody one of them had a criminal record. Both medical in their 30s. Came in just fine on Thursday morning. Heck of a rough Well, the reason why they used it, it was the second UA tells me you want to get some cost. So fresh, so right alcohol. And start drinking. Can you enforce this? Obviously, personal behavior. Maybe I want to share my small group session. How many of you were in this meeting? But 10 years ago, people thought there's no way we could make money using the building. But 2 years ago, we're at least going to make a policy. So we'll change and say, here's where we're going to put our marker. A lot of people are concerned, rightly so, if you're in the business, but it's after too. And there is that balance. And I get it. I want people, but it's the deal of,
I don't smoke, but
your freedom ends at the tip of my nose.
But on that issue, I don't smoke, but I think the first issue
So I think that, like, when I think about establishments, I like to think about what rises to accomplish, right? So we don't allow establishments to cook their food in whatever way they want, standards for food preparation, because we know that if they don't do that, to a certain standard, there's gonna be public monitors getting sick. So I guess identify smoking as really, smoking indoors and exposure to secondhand smoke is a huge part of it.
And you as a team decide to move to the other side.
This rises to the level of intervention on it. So I see this similar, that, it's setting standards of behavior and then actually doing culture shift.
That's the issue. It's more than 10. So we had young people getting off the fire. But we had 20 standard deviation trying to crash. That's not your fault. I'm not saying that's your fault. I'm saying that's somebody in their room had 15 monkeys. And all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom.
And that's when you call in one officer public gutters, like a library.
How are you guys doing? Getting some ideas written down?
No, we're not giving,
Yeah, we have I have a thought on the backside.
Yep, so flip over.
I don't know why the.
Fair enough, but we didn't figure out the front, so
Okay.
we gotta get.
Oh, we did.
Yeah. Is there disagreement with?
Any questions, issues?
Let's try with broader.
I don't like comments. The word comments.
Section 5.
Things that are getting you stuck.
We could just strike it.
we're framing it, it's framed as excessive.
So focus on what you're
I'm saying quality, we're saying
All right.
excessive consumption.
toss, change,
You know, these words
move on to
are.
the other section. Don't be stuck, because otherwise, we could, yeah, right? Is that fair?
Maybe with the idea of not what's next.
No, not lose what my original question was, the original ordinance, that it does cover other behaviors outside of just.
It does, but it really hasn't been used. So one of the reasons we try to use this phrase is use it as a vehicle to focus on alcohol and substances to give this ideas.
You're considering that it was inconvenient to have to drive down.
Right, yeah, as long as you can use it.
Now, what if,
So, are we down to C?
Yeah, what do you think about
Or a person lives on it.
This is the first.
C is a big deal for the members who want to start it.
I'm fine with it.
And we have almost no complaining thing, and then how
The
is
students
that?
didn't see a problem with that either.
Like, if you hear the screaming at section 1, so you write it down, then you write it down without this.
So I think what you guys, I mean, you have stopped the details here, and I know some of the table
All right, we're down to D.
what is going to be helpful.
So so on the second line, I don't know if this makes sense or not, but under the influence of alcohol and or, even if it's an and situation, or certain
You and I can have a discussion afterwards about the grammatical correctness and our.
I don't know. I just throwing it out. Okay, and then,
Again, this is
so,
there are police department.
yeah, okay. So, my other comment would just be, could we add something about vulnerable harms?
So as of right now,
If that's implied to us, because I think about somebody's harm to themselves or others, and vulnerable to harm.
That is
certainly part of our concern.
Because if you're passed out drunk and lying on the sidewalk, you're causing harm to yourself, but I think the more causing harm to yourself, but there's a more like vulnerable. You want to protect vulnerable person.
Harm to self, themselves or others.
Well, we still have.
I would say or is vulnerable to harm from others. I would defer to.
Some students are getting time on.
That's fine. So we need to address that.
That's definitely harm to self. I think the concept, that's what we're here, but I mean, I had a pretty.
And I think some of that's been tried.
Woman drunk, friends left, someone offered to give her a ride. Bunch of guys just saying, it doesn't sound much worse than that. But she saw me at the pre-trial, so she was, but, you know, you were. Persuasion, she didn't know what she was doing. Now, we could prove that as harm to yourself, but it also makes.
But it's yeah. I mean, harm to self would be, I think, the health effects of being so intoxicated that you might need a detox. Vulnerable to harm means, I mean, alcohol's the number one gateway drug, and I mean, it's used so that she can. Right, I'm not harming myself. I mean, I'm harming myself in a health way, but it's really that somebody else is harming me because I'm vulnerable to harm. So
And then also,
I have problems with yours, like this,
So again, I think.
and the other thing that we talked about is the neighborhood. We want the students to go to the police officers. That's for So we're worried about distance.
So anytime there's a standard,
Is there something that makes this specific sense to do? And I think all of us can come up with anecdotal stories and but our goal is to, I think Joe talks about is explicit or the numbers of and that's really the nice thing. If you want to move to the other side and put stuff there, you can certainly talk about it. So I see some level of frustration. You have 10 remaining minutes, so please get to sections now that you really want to talk about.
So one of the things that came was students is everything else that and then the third word is it's the outreach to the students somehow, even in your conversion. If they have to come up with their award or wherever they did a property thing.
Have someone that's going to get a
You don't
bring
like
it this work.
wreck someone's trees, you know.
We have lots of strategies that might be.
So that's what they want. I was a big fan against students. You see them fall in the opposite. These students, it's like their votes in the turn.
then
All right, keep going.
Let's see somebody ask.
Are you guys done?
Written down a few words.
On D2, public, doesn't have like sidewalks, is that all that just like somewhere else, sidewalks?
Yeah, I think that's clearly public, so I think
Okay. Adding more places to public?
going back to the words like they're causing it, the only
Yeah, I know you're looking for something there.
I know, so it's like, we can't wait. Phrase right out of other.
Can you do that without a family member or something? Really?
I talk about narrow research, how far they are.
Facilities are,
Family members, the students right now are, they're very controlled by their parents. I don't think they don't know they get they don't know they just don't know. They go out, get in trouble, or 19, 20, 20 years old, and the ticket shows up on, 424 Washington Street address, and they go, shoot.
I need new books.
Yeah, I need new books, but they're all connected to the university, everybody's kind of connected. And some of it's probably right in privacy, you can't go, it's an adult, you can't call mom. Your little kid is orthopedic
well, so there are, you can, so there's, so what, the privacy standards for the university called FEPA, so Family Something Privacy Act, and that does allow for parental notification is okay. So there are situations in which the parent does get notified, and the city the solid officials, like the teacher's student's office, and they let us know as a university, so they let us know if there's some kind of like, they pull really high PVC or something that causes us to think, gosh, this student was really, lucky that nothing really bad happened, then there is a parental notification that happens, and sometimes it causes the residents to make that. I don't think there's a hard and fast standard, but like some kind of extenuating circumstance that either they resist or they try to resist arrest, physical altercations, or violence, aggression, really high BAC, or they're suicidal all the time, all those kinds of things.
One thing we do is we deal with other issues. And we can't call a parent because they're adults, but we write on the envelope, address it to the parents, Billy student, parents, and then we'll write in big red letters, urgent, and then every parent's gonna open it, right? Yeah.
Not your problem, yeah. So that's a great point. I mean, we do use that. I mean, there have been
Parents, families, or whatever. Yeah, you're not gonna get the book from
DWI
Question on the bus. Okay, so I'm driving the bus, I drive up someplace, 10 people get off, the 11th kid wants to get off. How can I stop them from walking off the street? That they kidnapped you? I said, you kidnapped? I mean, really, that's holding someone against
And then about
their rules.
I don't understand the problem.
So we haven't declared war.
It's just that, the bus will pick up large group of residents halls, and then they're all responsible of trying to figure out where the party is. And a party that maybe doesn't want to become a big party will drive lots of residents, lots of people. And push their way in, and then there'll be a breathing party without make it down. So that's, a recognition that they're not providing the same right to the party.
Yes, correct.
So safe right to the party. So if somebody walking, right.
So you have 5 more minutes. Remember, I'm asking you for specific changes, recommendations to the ordinance in front of you.
Graham?
This is the only part of the ordinance in my understanding that is limited to specifically merits. So it's 15 part, but everything else is comprehensive. So this is a recognition that there is a problem.
You can drop off and come in. Right now, you're stopping, you're just stopping. And there's any place where the bus stops are,
Attempt to try to work
there's not actually a place.
neighborhoodly and trying to get progress.
So where's the, let's see, he's such a stops.
Right, and it's
Yeah, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, you guys, probably more like 3, so wrap it up and find a spokesperson.
It's only the connection to the residential areas, not, like I was thinking of the riverfronts if possible.
Can't get pictures of the health department director.
It's really not the students.
I'm bringing a napkin.
Well, that's about physical disruption, not about
For later, after we're done.
But in that, students just walk down the streets and they're just having fun. So there's kids that are really outside just for having fun. It's just without alcohol, have fun and stuff like that. Like it's just about the behavior.
When it comes down to trying
If you were like a limousine company, or if you're coming from out of town, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know this ordinance.
I think it's just citing
But I suppose it's not
the pattern of, like we're saying the pattern, so they're saying they want to do it.
Nice colorful one.
Only my name.
Does anybody want to?
Cheers.
No, not to
I don't know. They were getting too excited about their donuts.
I thought you were gonna cave there. That's all.
All right, identify a spokesperson.
So I don't know that we've really got very far on this. I haven't Steve, but Steve has no.
Full volume.
You guys ready?
I know there's one point, Kevin,
No. All right, we're gonna get back together. I know that there's more conversation that could be had, but we're gonna go through section by section, and please jump in if there's perspective that hasn't been shared that you think is particularly important. There are also, thank you for bringing treats, there are also additional treats in the back. You guys ready? All right, purpose. First paragraph of 9.5.6 really defines the purpose of this. It's setting the stage for unsafe use of alcohol and other substances. This section is created to limit the effects of that, and it's not, you know, really applying to First Amendment rights, but it's really broadly saying we as a community think that we need to have ordinance related to this. Feedback or thoughts? So I'm just going to go quickly from group to group around purpose. Do you guys have any feedback about that purpose paragraph?
No, I guess we understood the whole concept and agreed. We did have quite a conversation whether it was appropriate to have the narrow word of neighborhood disruption and unrest in one sentence, and the second one saying providing a healthy community. It almost sounds like in one phrase we're addressing just neighborhood areas, and then in the other phrase we're addressing the entire community. And we don't know what the thought was when this was written. We kind of saw both sides, so I don't know that it's a big sticking point for us, but there just seemed to be, that was our conversation, the difference there.
Okay, so it does say and, it's a whole list of things, and neighborhood disruption. Is everybody following that? And this is broad, neighborhood and community disruption maybe, but okay. So is neighborhood too narrow? Okay, anything else? Did you guys do anything related to purpose?
We're okay with purpose.
Okay with purpose. How about you guys? Anything related to purpose? Okay with purpose. How about you guys? Anything with purpose?
Just a thought to maybe expand, even though it's spelled out later in the sections about physical neighborhood disruption within the purpose.
So more about neighborhood disruption?
Yeah.
The garbage and the cans.
Okay, so physical pieces of that. Physical, I can't spell. Okay? In that purpose section to be more explicit about that. Okay? Did you guys talk about purpose at all?
Well, yeah, a little bit about unrest and striking that. And I think it is important, that we have consistency between either neighborhood or community, because when we were talking about neighborhoods, the only place in here that specifically talks about neighborhood is Third Ward and Rainbow Park, which are predominantly, students, and it seems like students are on rest in the neighborhood. That's how it feels from a student perspective.
Okay. So where it's explicitly called out Third Ward and Randolph, but do you think neighborhood generally in all of these sections is, certainly neighborhood implies residential areas, but perhaps some level of consistency?
Yeah, I think it's important to have community.
Okay. To say community. Okay.
Avoid the appearance that students are being targeted.
Okay. Are people hearing that? So some consideration in that opening phrase to really focus on community safety, community, community kind of physical environment, all of those pieces. Am I hearing that from everybody? Because neighborhood might feel like there's a targeting of specific areas.
Well, because we talk about two specific neighborhoods elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
It's pretty logical for people
to imply.
To make that mistake.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? All right. I'm going to the next section, which is B, public good order. This section is edited from the previous the current public good order ordinance language. I'm going to start with you guys. Any suggestions, input, concerns, or things that you think are particularly important to include?
Maybe just to adjust the term annoying, replace it with something else like harass or interrupt.
Okay, so this is under B2. Am I reading that in the right place? So annoy being perhaps a word that is concerning.
It's also under part 5.
Okay, under 2 and 5. And the proposal was?
Something that wasn't so subjective.
Recommendation? I mean, that's part of the challenge, right? We count on our law enforcement that's using this to use judgment and have a framework, so we need to give some language, but as...
Does hinder and prevent cover the waterfront?
Yeah, it's hinder and prevent enough.
Okay, so is this necessary? Okay. I'm writing hinder and prevent sufficient is a question mark. Do we need annoy? Yes? Any other input into that section? B, 1 through 6.
Is the noise supposed to be about verbal intimidation? If you're saying something, or catcalling?
That's how I would take it. I mean, if somebody is intoxicated or under the influence of something and they're screaming at people as they're walking by, but not trying to stop them, would we consider that an acceptable behavior?
But even if you do that sober, would you consider that an acceptable behavior, which is where I run into the issue here, with this? Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go group by group. So the question, this is again framed around public intoxication, around broad alcohol misuse. So I think those, we'll get to your feedback, Brandon, in just a minute. But one question is related to the word annoy, and we'll get additional feedback on that. Is it necessary, and is it the right word? Yes? Is that this group? Feedback? I started with you guys. I want to make sure I hear from each table.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And we'll get additional feedback from everybody else. Anything else in B, public good order? Mm-hmm. And again, acknowledge that the word annoy was in the original language. That's not new language. Does everybody see that under 5? I mean, we currently have the word annoy. Just again, to be really clear that that's currently what we're operating under. That was not proposed as new language. So currently, law enforcement can contact someone around the word annoy. So I think we just need to be really aware of what is existing language and what's added. Annoy is the word that was already in there. Okay, whether or not we think it's a great language or not. Anything else related to B? What about you guys, public good order?
Well, we said basically, I mean, we thought it was good overall.
Okay.
But I would agree with a lot of the points what this table was saying, that they were saying both annoy and kind of changing.
Whether annoy is a good word to have in there.
I guess that, yeah.
Okay. What about you guys and the section B, public good order? Did you have any explicit feedback around that section? So the new pieces around loitering, new pieces around refusing to follow instructions of a business owner, or speaking in volumes that were disturbing in a residential area. Those are the primary new pieces, just to acknowledge that.
I know one of the topics that came up about the noise disturbing somebody, and why does it say residential areas? I think that had, if I could explain it a little bit, is that if somebody is walking down a bike trail by the river and nobody's around, and they're talking at a certain level to themselves, screaming out loud, who are they disturbing?
Right.
And so what we're finding out is a lot of the disturbing is happening where people are sleeping and they have their windows open in the residential area. So I think that is why.
To clarify that. So this is under B6. Does everybody see that? So that's additional language to just clarify. Yelling when you're down at the bike trail or yelling when you're out, somewhere that's not going to bother people is not the issue. It's yelling when people are disrupted. All right, I'm going to move on to you guys. Anything under B?
I got a late edition from the
Public good order.
This is my city planner hat. So
Yep.
Number 6, say within a dwelling in the residential zone district. Well, we do have central business district, which allows dwellings, that's zone commercial. So you might want to say something like, or a district that allows residents.
Okay.
Water Street's a good example of that.
So we're areas that allows residents versus a residential, okay.
And how about verbally harass instead of annoying? Could get more specifically covered.
Okay. So we can look at that language, okay?
Another late addition that, because there was so much to talk about, but just some of the feedback I heard was that people were concerned about the use of this loitering in any building or structure, if not using the building for its intended purpose, and people getting targeted if they were without a home and were using a building not exactly for what it was intended, or sleeping in the library.
So feedback on inclusion or not inclusion of that language is what we need to kind of consider.
Yeah, I just threw it out there now, so.
Okay.
Because I didn't want it to get missed.
Okay. So 3. Question about keep is proposed by one person. What about you guys? Any additional?
I don't think so.
No? Can people live with it generally with some of the tweaks? This would be remaining a question that was just brought up. Can people live with that section, public good order? Yes?
I mean, from like a student perspective, can we live with it? Yeah, but the question that a lot of students are having is this going to be enforced all around? You know, if you're in Southside Eau Claire, is that going to be enforced, or is it going to be enforced specifically on Water Street and that type of stuff? Because that's where an increased police presence is. You know, at the hours of night where this may be an issue. And so, I mean, yeah, can we live with it if it's enforced citywide, but if it's punitive on students, that's where we're going to have an issue.
Right. Again, it's a city ordinance, so it's not specific to a certain neighborhood, and it is only in those situations where someone is causing a problem. You know, again, I think this is a lot of back and forth between the assumption that people would be targeted versus the how are people behaving that are drawing attention to them, that then there's an additional tool in the toolbox. I think we did hear a lot of feedback from students about that concern about being targeted, so I think we're definitely hearing that. The way the language is written, all of this applies citywide, and it's a tool for the toolbox citywide. Again, none of these things, if behavior isn't in a certain way, will be seen as a problematic. Does that make sense? Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, so to address your question, I think we base our stuff off of hot maps and what the data is. So if we're having problems or concerns with some type of behavior in a certain area within the city, we need to address it. And so if that's happening on the south side, we will be there to address that. My hope is that with the work that we're doing here, maybe some of my resources that have been directed into the central area that we're talking about here, I can displace out into other areas of the community and address some of the other concerns that we have, address some of the drug issues that we have throughout the whole community. My take on this ordinance is that it is throughout the community. If we have issues up on the north side, on the south side, we'll address it the same way that we address it anywhere else in the city.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to move on to C so we can keep moving. Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
She brought up number 3.
Yeah.
She wants to strike that, or she wants to enforce, she wants to...
I think there were concerns expressed about number 3. So additional feedback on that? So that's a new addition, loiter in buildings or structures if not using the building for intended purposes.
If I can comment on this real quick too. People that own the structures can tell people to leave. They have the right to tell them to leave if they don't want them there. And a lot of times they're afraid to do that. And so I think this is a tool for us to use so that we could actually come in and there could be something to hold our hat on to tell them you have to leave. And yes, it is an ordinance here that you can't, if you're not using this building for its intended use, you have to leave. Majority of the time, when people are told to leave, they leave. But this shows us that we can actually come in and do something. So I hope that explains.
And clarify that if they left, they won't get a ticket. It would be if they refuse to leave.
It's 420.
Yep. Are we comfortable with what we have? So question, and there may be additional feedback to council about that. Thank you. So C is neighborhood disruption, an entirely new section. Physical neighborhood disruption, again, responding to some specific questions about the status of neighborhoods after large parties. So I'm going to start with you guys in the back. I don't think we started with you, so go ahead. Yep, C, physical neighborhood disruption, an entirely new section, 1 and 2.
The Third Ward Neighborhood Association loves C.
Okay, love C. Any additional comment? How about you guys? Any comment about C? No? You guys, comment about C.
I think we like it. There was some questions, and I think maybe Chad could offer some additional information on this as well. Clarification that it's not just because somebody has been drinking that they will be questioned or whatever by law enforcement, but based on behaviors.
So the focus on the behavior, not just that they have a beer in their hand. Okay. You guys, anything with C, neighborhood disruption?
No, we liked it. We did have a small discussion about how some of the feedback elsewhere has been related to the specifics of floats and front yard versus backyard.
Okay, so number 2, is it too explicit? Is that maybe a question?
Yes.
Okay. And what about you guys? So number C2 talks about front lawns, drives, fire escapes, and then it goes through chairs, tables, game tables, tubes, floats, other items not for outdoor use. So, yes.
Can I have clarification? So, right-of-way accumulation cans, bottles, similar containers, not properly disposed in refuse?
Refuse or recycling containers?
Is that garbage?
Yes. Refuse container is garbage. You guys have additional comments?
But the city already has laws for all this stuff set into place. I mean, I guess the question is what needs to be changed from the laws that we already have?
So the question is so for number C, for letter C, the question is what do we currently not have that is in place? So there isn't, and I'll double check. Go ahead, Janessa.
So that's a misconception that I've heard a lot, is that we have tools to address this kind of problem. We actually don't. There's only one littering ordinance on the books, and it's specifically for parks. So that doesn't address any of the neighborhood disruption that you're seeing here.
Okay, does that help clarify? So we do not currently have something. Any additional comments about that? So this is very specific.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If there was an attempt to dispose of these in garbage cans or recycling cans, but it was, let's say, overflowing, or would they be subject to this ordinance?
So again, what law enforcement has is a tool in their toolbox to say, guys, clean this up. And clean up can be in a bag. You could have, there's all kinds of ways to clean up. It's those places, actually we have pictures from this weekend if people want to see, and you guys, everybody here has seen them, where there's been no attempt at cleanup. It's not the garbage container that's overflowing. That's a whole nother issue. But
is there a citation for overflow dumpster?
There, so
I believe, correct? Is there a citation, or can you get a ticket now if your dumpster or garbage can is too full in a public or private property?
overflow, you have to have it emptied. So, and it's probably a health department citation, I don't know, is that true, Steve? I should know this, but.
123 Niagara at the party, and they actually pick up, and they put the garbage in the trash.
Yep.
But they had too much garbage, and they didn't have a big enough dumpster.
Yep.
And they get a citation for having that overflow dumpster. That law's already.
That is not my understanding unless it's not picked up within that week. So again, and this would not do something about that. This is the lawn full of indoor furniture, red cups, all of the disaster that we've seen, not pertaining to that.
So can we honestly talk about C though and say that this is an issue in the 3rd Ward in Randall Park? Because we are talking about it citywide, but then we talk about inflatables and parties, and I think that's basically happening in 3rd Ward in Randall Park, is what that C is talking about.
I would say that it's often seen there, but it's not the only place it's happening. Is that your concern?
Well, everyone keeps talking, like we're talking about inflatables and we're talking about parties and house parties and people are having trash, and I just want to be, if we want to have a good conversation, let's have an honest conversation.
Yeah.
And I just want to know if C is talking mostly about the student neighborhood.
C has been raised up from a variety of neighborhoods, but certainly Randall Park is one of them, absolutely. And I think that everybody understands that in this room, but it's not the only place that happens, so.
And if that's where the thing is occurring, I don't think it's necessarily being unfair to target that.
Right.
If it was happening in right around my neighborhood, somebody'd be targeting it, because I'd be on the phone.
Yeah.
So,
And there's no and there's no current ordinance that allows anything really to be done about it. So again, if this was happening in the south side of Eau Claire, this ordinance now would allow something to be done about it. Again, citywide, or the north side of Eau Claire. So am I seeing general agreement that there's logic to having something around this? Some concerns about potential targeting, but logic. I'm going to move us along then. So D, new section on public intoxication. So this is related to alcohol and other substances. So section D makes it, again, very explicit that someone that is of danger to themselves or others, perceived to be of danger to themselves or others, again, this is language in ordinance that law enforcement can address that before something disastrous happens and they have to pick up the pieces. So you guys haven't gone first yet. Any feedback about D?
one of the questions that I have, or one of the things that I hear, is that this is going to be over-applied, and the police are going to run around looking for people who've had a few drinks and say, oh, you smell like alcohol, you have bloodshot eyes, I'm going to give you a ticket. So the fact that I think that those two things are in there as part of establishing a whole chain of things, but it's the things that come after that I think really are the issue. So in some ways, is that just giving something for people to be concerned about, saying, oh, bloodshot eyes and they smell of alcohol? Well, but I know that that's a part of like a OWI description of what you go through, right? So it suggests so on and so on and so on and so on. But it's really these things over here that lead me to believe someone's dangerously intoxicated, likely to harm themselves, likely to harm somebody else. So that's my concern with the bloodshot eyes.
Under D1 is where you're specifically.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like we're establishing a low bar for this ticket, and I don't think we are.
No, and it really, if you read the words in D, which is framing this, it's really demonstrably under the influence, if you read that,
right,
and causing or is likely to cause harm to themselves or others.
Right.
Or a disturbance. So that and is critically important in D1 just says how that someone's going to observe that as a starting point. Does that make sense to everybody? So again, it doesn't require, a breathalyzer test, for example. It's the scan of what is being seen plus the behavior. So I am above the legal drinking limit on Water Street, and I walk home, but I walk home fine. I don't appear to be a harm to myself or others. No problem. If I appear to be in a situation where I'm not going to get home and I'm a danger to myself or potentially to others, I could be cited under this.
What is illegal drinking limit to walk home?
There isn't a legal drinking limit to walk home. If you appear to be
If you're walking into traffic or you're falling down.
walking into traffic, sleeping on the sidewalk, really in a position where the next thing we're worried about, this is again a very strong prevention language, that's what this is about. So it is not anything about targeting people that smell like alcohol.
Right.
And it's written very explicitly that way.
Why are we changing the way what's written now, though?
There's nothing written now. There's nothing written now.
Doesn't that fall under disorderly conduct as it is right now?
It does not. So unless there's a...
If a person is intoxicated and causing harm or disturbance, then they are already violating the city's disorderly conduct ordinance. Don't we have a disorderly conduct ordinance?
Go ahead, Chad. No.
Here's one of the things that we're trying to do with this is we're trying to address the culture of drinking, is that with this public good order type ordinance, we're also trying to incorporate a diversion part to deal with people that are actually consuming alcohol and dealing with the alcohol problem. Right now, we don't have that with disorderly conduct. So do you potentially have a behavior that could fall under disorderly conduct? Yes. But this is something that we're trying to address, a culture of overconsumption and the behavior. And so...
How is that beneficial, though, Chad? What's your thoughts of why it's going to be beneficial to do that?
Beneficial to who?
to the public to let people know that we got found a bunch of drunken, disorderly people and wrote them a ticket?
Well, I'm hoping that eventually we'll change the culture so they don't get to that point. Right? Well, we're trying to change the culture here so that they aren't getting so intoxicated to the point that they're engaging in this type of behavior, right? That's what we're trying to do as a group. We're trying to figure out how do we do that.
How do we step back? And so this is a step earlier.
Approach, even if they ended up getting a small fine for this versus a disorderly conduct charge?
I'm just worried about the panic attack of people hearing this and thinking the world's coming to an end here with Steve.
So that's part of our job. That's why we're together talking about it. This is a.
I see what you're saying, that this is actually a two-pronged. I mean.
This should actually make people feel better.
What if we were a community that came out and said that we're public intoxication and that's it? If you're demonstrably publicly intoxicated, you fall under this and get a ticket. A community could come out and say that.
And
They
have.
could take a stance on that.
Yeah.
But we're saying that there also has to be some type of behavior attached to that.
So we're actually trying to take a step back and say, your behavior indicates you might be unsafe to yourself or others, and we want to pay attention to that and try and prevent it in the future. So I've seen a couple of hands. Were you done, Al, with your question? Okay, Helene?
Well, I could give an example in our neighborhood, Randall Park. A few years back, there was a demonstrably drunken, I don't know if it was a student, but young person, weaving into the street, etc. We called the police, and the police could not help that person. They had no recourse. That's what they told us. They couldn't, we didn't have public intoxication, so they couldn't pick the person up and take them anywhere or do anything.
So this is a step, a slightly different step.
I see it as being powerful.
Yeah, we can help them. I guess I mean, we aren't going to leave somebody there that's intoxicated that's it.
Well, I kind of just uprated them and.
Right. We're
Yeah.
trying to get somebody that's responsible.
Right, to support
It
them.
also comes down to, we're trying to change a culture and behavior here, and this is a tool to start addressing that. This isn't the only answer.
Yeah.
This is just a tool that we're talking about today.
And one potential deterrent for that behavior. Austin, did you have something?
These behaviors that we're addressing in here are not currently covered by anything.
They are not.
None
Not.
of the behaviors, none of the noise or disruption, nothing.
Again, if it gets significant enough to be disorderly conduct, it could be, but this is a lesser charge with diversion opportunities, and that's where, again, there's the hope that people, if they fall under this, that they go through diversion opportunities and things get dropped. So, Steve, were you going to add something to that?
Right, so it wouldn't be correct to say that you couldn't address any of the behaviors. But again, we as a group, I think in every one of these meetings, we reaffirmed it today, said that we had an issue as a community. We wanted to try to address the culture. So with the purpose section, and then followed up by this being an enforced standard provision, we're trying to focus specifically on excessive alcohol and other drug consumption as being a known leading contributor to those other bad behaviors.
And this is one way to do that. Again, not creating panic. I think, part of our job as the community stakeholders here is to talk about how this is a tool. It's not the be-all, end-all to change culture, but it is one of the tools potentially in the toolbox.
But it is addressing the behaviors, correct? And technically someone who hasn't consumed anything can still be subject to these behaviors and can still be cited, correct?
So you have to be more explicit in what you're saying. Which behaviors are you talking about?
Let's say someone is screaming at night, but they haven't consumed anything, could they still be cited?
So again, there'll be a whole conversation with law enforcement. The way this is written, if it is publicly disturbing people, your example of screaming certainly could be. The goal, the way this is framed as public behavior under the purpose statement, is that it's related to alcohol and other substances.
And another thing we try to do within the broad criminal justice system is to charge people with the most specific applicable violation. So, could that be a noise violation? It could. If somebody complained and it was or likely to bother someone. But if they're just walking, stumbling down the road, mumbling, yelling. Those are a set of, behaviors that may not, meet a noise violation.
Okay.
But are indicators that that's somebody who's extremely intoxicated and might need some intervention. And in terms of the citations that I know that we end up seeing and they're used, maybe they're a DC or something, these are not people that are just a little intoxicated. These are people that either were taken to detox or were right on the edge. I mean, these are people that are 2 O's and above. And the one I shared with Jed at the last meeting was an individual who was so drunk that he urinated in the middle of the Pioneer and couldn't remember doing it. So, yeah, you can get him on DC, you could get him on public urination, but what he really was extremely intoxicated.
And then it's more explicit.
What if someone was...
You get kicked out, by the way, so everyone knows.
You don't like that, I assume? So, yes, Austin?
Yeah, if someone was stumbling, mumbling, yelling, talking to themselves, but they weren't under the influence of anything, you couldn't talk to them through this? Same approach?
Again, the frame for that, right.
Affect, correct?
Again, I
Saying
think,
the behaviors are more extreme when alcohol and drugs become.
right.
Okay.
That's what they're trying to, and
Yeah.
you're right, facts are facts.
Well, they'd be mentally ill.
And that's a whole nother system of
If they're not
services.
intoxicated and they're mumbling and stumbling and talking to themselves, they're mentally ill. They go to the hospital.
Or recycle.
Pardon?
Or recycle.
Again, the services are provided. I think, yes, I mean, any of these explicit language pieces, we can take down a rabbit hole. But again, the frame of this, the goal with it, if we want to move forward with it, is to frame a different culture of behavior here. So Brandon was first and then
I think
Jed.
at this point,
Yep.
we're 8 minutes past, and I
Yep.
think we need more meetings. I have something I need to get to at 5, so.
Yep.
we
Thank
call
you for that
another
feedback.
meeting.
We'll talk about that in 1 second. I want Jed to give feedback and then yes.
I've been told for 12 years of marriage now, don't ever speak to my wife, don't
Ah.
ever speak in public.
Good luck with that.
We want to make, as the Hart household and North Water, the ECPD and the fire do great work. I mean,
Yeah.
we put up with a lot of the same stuff every weekend. Is it Water Street, the hot map? Sure. Is it
Yeah.
Barstow Street? Is it, different saloons down here on by the post office, so on and so forth? So whatever we can do to make it better, great.
Yep.
Let's be fair about it, and let's go about it with open mind. We're all trying to get the same goal on it.
Yeah,
Let's
which
not
I
fumble
appreciate.
this on a 2-yard line.
Yeah.
Fair?
So I'm hearing there's still interest in this conversation and we should keep talking, and that there's, again, this is not a magic wand solution. So Kevin, did you want to share something?
Yeah, the neighborhood association had issue with the or is likely to cause language, and a little bit with the definition of intoxication. It's difficult to really, you say, well, they gotta be really staggering drunk, and that's not what it says here. It kind of has the same flavor to it as getting a DUI for drinking and driving, and obviously sitting on a bar stool is different than operating.
So as long as you, and again, not for today since we're over time, but explicit language proposed if there's something that people don't like is going to be important. So we are over time. My apologies. It takes a lot. This is tough stuff, right? And I appreciate you guys digging in and thinking about it. We have a couple options. We can schedule another meeting really quickly next week and talk. I was going to propose that if we got through all of this today, that we reconvene in a couple of weeks, and the dates are up there as options. I'm not hearing consensus from this group that we bring forward anything but a report to City Council next week. Is that a fair judgment for what's happened today? Yes? Okay. Anybody thinking differently? Good feedback, and we'll work through it and provide some input to all of you. Is there still in this group consensus that working through some type of ordinance makes some sense as one of the tools in the toolbox? I see yes from most of the people. Something, yeah, Jed?
Have we talked to other cities with universities, Madison, River Falls, across, how they do it?
Absolutely.
Have you talked to city officials and all, or university boards or student bodies in Madison?
Right.
How they do it?
Yep, Wisconsin has a problem all over the place. There are public intoxication ordinances that are very explicit. As was said earlier, just being intoxicated, you can be cited versus intoxicated plus. So there are different versions of this type of ordinance in other places. Yeah.
Most notably and most nearby, Menominee and La Crosse. both of
Yep.
them.
Yep.
I think just for the, just to kind of be clear with city council that it wasn't that we did, like, we're getting through it and that we, I mean, I hear a lot of support today for the different, as we go.
Different
piece by
components.
piece. I mean, there's some concerns, but there's a lot of general support for some of the language. So I think that if that could be, somehow, we're still working, but.
Yeah.
we can come to
I would
a
hope that they would
conclusion.
hold off on passing something till we came to
I think council is interested in that, is my sense, but that's certainly part of what we would bring to them.
Yeah, I didn't hear any consensus of killing anything big on the first page.
I haven't seen that either.
What it sounded like to me.
And does that feel comfortable for people if that's the kind of communication, that it's not throw everything away? There's still some work that needs to be done, but there's agreement that ordinance moving forward will be helpful to have some additional tools that we don't currently have. Is that a fair statement? Yes? Okay. So then the question is, do I set a meeting and let you guys know, is there interest in meeting before May 14th, which would be 2 weeks from today, but at 1 o'clock? Or do we want to try and meet next week right away?
I vote for next week.
Next week? Okay, same time next week if that's possible. We will work.
Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.